My cousin Ryan has always been a man with strong opinions about other people's potential, not his own. He is a fairly modest person when it comes to self-assessment, but he has a particular gift for evaluating the trajectories of people around him, for reading where someone is headed and expressing his reading with a confidence that, over time, I came to understand was not based on any special insight, but simply on the assumption that his assessments were correct because he had made them. He assessed me at my aunt's retirement party when I was 32 and had been teaching at a university for 4 years. He said, "Catherine is one of those people who's going to be a really good teacher her whole life. Reliable, comfortable. He's found her lane." He did not say it to me. He said it to my aunt, who was standing next to him. I was standing 3 feet away, looking at the food table, and I heard it clearly. A really good teacher her whole life. Found her lane. I thought about it on the drive home. I had been teaching for 4 years at that point. I had also, in those 4 years, published research that was cited more than 100 times in its first year. Been appointed to a faculty committee that was unusual for someone at my career stage, and been quietly identified by the university leadership as someone they were interested in developing for administrative roles. None of that was visible at the food table. I decided not to correct Ryan's assessment, not because I was certain he was wrong. The administrative path was not guaranteed. Teaching for the rest of my career was a real possibility and not a bad one, but something about the particular confidence of Founder Lane, the certainty of the settling, the comfort he assigned to me made me want to find out what he would say when the lane revealed itself to be something other than what he had measured it as. 14 years later, I found out. My name is Professor Catherine Ellis. I am 46 years old. I have been chancellor of a mid-sized research university in the northeastern United States for 3 years. The path from assistant professor to chancellor is not common and not quick. It involves the teaching and the research that form the foundation of an academic career, but also a series of administrative roles, department chair, deans, provost, that require a different set of skills than teaching and research, and that many talented academics choose not to pursue. I pursued them not because I was less committed to the scholarship, but because I found early that I was also good at the administrative work in ways that were useful, and that the work itself was interesting in ways I had not anticipated. The specific sequence of appointments that led to the chancellorship took 12 years from the moment I began being considered for administrative roles to the confirmation of the appointment. 12 years of committees and budgets and faculty governance, and the particular navigational complexity of large academic institutions, and a lot of meetings. At no point during those 12 years did I call my cousin Ryan to update him on the lane. Ryan's son is named Michael. Michael is 20 years old and wants to study environmental science. He is, by his father's account, a good student, motivated, curious, with a kind of focused interest in a subject that tends to produce successful researchers if it is properly channeled. He applied to several universities. He applied to mine. The application process at a research university of our size involves thousands of applications and is managed by the admissions office with a process that I am not part of at the individual student level. I do not review applications. I do not know, in any given admission cycle, the names of the people being accepted or denied. Ryan called me in March. The way parents of college applicants call everyone they know who might have institutional connections, with the particular energy of someone who is about to ask a favor but hasn't quite formulated the request yet. He said Michael had applied to my university. I said that was great. He said the acceptance notification was coming soon and Michael was nervous. I said I understood. There was a pause. Then he said, "Is there anything you could? I mean, you're on the faculty. Do you know anyone in admissions?" I said, "Ryan, I can't influence an individual application. That's not how it works, and it wouldn't be appropriate." He said, "Right. No, of course. I just thought," I said, "I know, but no. He'll find out when he finds out." He was slightly disappointed. I think he had expected that faculty connections might be useful. What he had not accounted for was the specific nature of the connection. Michael's acceptance notification arrived on a Tuesday. It was a letter. We send physical letters for acceptances along with the digital notification because we believe in the weight of paper for significant moments. The letter is signed at the bottom, along with the Director of Admissions, by the Chancellor, by me. Ryan called me the next morning. He said, "Michael got in." I said, "That's wonderful. I'm glad." He said, "He's very excited." A pause. "Catherine, the acceptance letter." I said, "Yes." He said, "It's signed by the Chancellor." I said, "Yes, those letters are." He said, "Chancellor Catherine Ellis." I said, "Yes." A silence. He said, I said, "Yes." He said, "You're the Chancellor." I said, "Of the university your son just got accepted to?" "Yes." Another silence. Longer this time. He said, "Since when?" I said, 3 years. He said, 3 years. "And before that?" I said, "Provost for 4 years. Before that, Dean Beful, that department chair, Beful, that associate professor, and then full professor." He said, "You've been for 14 years. I said, "I found a lane, Ryan. It just wasn't the one." You measured. I want to be clear about what I felt in that moment because I think the honest version matters. There was satisfaction. I will not pretend there wasn't. 14 years of found her lane and the letter that resolved it and the specific quiet of his silence on the other end of the phone. Yes, there was satisfaction, but there was also something else. There was the awareness that Ryan's opinion had mattered to me for 14 years, that the comment at the retirement party had stayed with me in the specific way that dismissals from people who are confident about their assessments stay with you, and that I had carried it through department chair meetings and budget negotiations. In the particular difficulty of the provost's years, without ever letting it affect the trajectory, I had let it be fuel. I had told myself it was just fuel, but fuel implies that you were running on something, and something was burning. The conversation that followed after the initial phone call happened at my aunt's birthday dinner 2 weeks later. The whole family was there, my parents, Ryan and his wife, my other cousins, the usual collection of people who gather for these events with the comfortable familiarity of people who have known each other for decades. Ryan told them. I did not stop him. He told the story of the acceptance letter, of his phone call, of finding out that the institution his son had been accepted to was led by his cousin. My aunt said, "Catherine, of course, I always thought you were going somewhere." My mother, who knew most of this but had not known the timing of Ryan's call, looked at me with the expression of someone who is enjoying something on their child's behalf. My father said. They teach leadership. He said it simply. At her university, they have a whole program. I read the website. He had apparently been reading the website for some time. Ryan said. I told someone at your cousin's party that she was reliable, comfortable, in her lane. I said, I remember. He said, you were standing 3 feet away. I said, I heard. He said, why didn't you say something? I said, because you were right, Hartley. I was reliable. I was comfortable. I was in a lane. The lane was just longer than you could see from where you were standing. He looked at me, I said, and I wanted to know what you'd say when you got to the end of it. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I think the word I used was comfortable. I said, you did. He said, that's not the right word. I said, no, it's not. He said, Catherine, I'm sorry. I said, I know you are. He said, Michael is going to tell everyone his cousin is the chancellor. I said, he probably shouldn't. It might create the wrong impression. He said, he's going to do it anyway. I said, I know. That's fine. Michael started in the fall. I do not have a special relationship with him in his academic life. That would be inappropriate, and he is enrolled in a program with no proximity to my administrative work. But I saw him once, in the first week of term, crossing the quad with a group of students with the particular tentative energy of someone who has just arrived somewhere large and is not yet sure of the geography. He saw me and stopped. He said, Chancellor Ellis. I said, Michael, how are you settling in? He said, good, really good. He looked slightly uncertain about the protocol. Can I still call you Catherine? Like when you come to Thanksgiving? I said, at Thanksgiving, yes. On campus, Chancellor is appropriate. He nodded. He said, my dad is still talking about the letter. I said, I imagine. He said he told you you'd found your lane. I said, he did. He said, he feels bad about it. I said, he should feel a little bad about it, but not too much. It was a long time ago, and it didn't slow me down. He smiled. He said he was proud of you. I said, I know. He told me. He said, he meant it. I said, I know he did. He shouldered his backpack and moved to go. Then he stopped and said, Chancellor Ellis. I said, yes. He said, thank you for the letter. I said, I didn't write your letter specifically. The admissions office, he said. I mean the one with your signature. I'm going to keep it. I looked at him. He said, my dad showed me the photo of you at the retirement party. He said you were standing right there when he said the thing, that you heard everything. I said, I did. He said, and you kept it. I said, for 14 years. He said, that's a long time to keep something. I said, yes, it is. He said, was it worth it? I thought about the question. About 14 years of committee meetings and budget cycles and the provost years and the 3 years since. About Ryan's silence on the phone. About Michael crossing the quad with that tentative energy of someone arriving somewhere that has my name on the letterhead. I said, yes, I think it was. He nodded. He said, okay. And he walked away into the rest of his first week. What I want to leave you with is the question Michael asked me, was it worth it? I said, yes. I believe that the specific arc of the 14 years, the patient building of something that the people around me could not fully see, the quiet accumulation of a record that spoke louder than any correction I could have offered, at a retirement party food table had a shape to it that I could not have manufactured consciously and could not have built if I had been managing other people's perceptions along the way. There is a kind of building that happens in the absence of audience, a quality of focus that comes from not performing progress for people who are watching. I do not know if I would have the career I have if I had spent those 14 years explaining and justifying and correcting. I also do not know if I would have carried Ryan's comments for 14 years if I had corrected it immediately. There is something that long-term ambition does with the things that sting. It turns them into something useful. The found her lane became fuel. As I said, the fuel became distance. The distance became the view from here. Is that a healthy relationship with dismissal? I am not certain. What I am certain of is this: the letter that arrived in Ryan's mailbox with my signature at the bottom was the most accurate description of my lane that could have been delivered, and it arrived at exactly the right moment. And I did not have to say a single word. Tell me in the comments. Have you ever held something for years, a dismissal, a comment, a wrong assessment, and let it burn slowly instead of correcting it immediately? What did you make with the fuel? I read everything